Welcome to Sleepy Philosophy, where ancient wisdom meets modern rest. Tonight, we're embarking on a gentle journey through the serene landscapes of Eastern thought, where the teachings of great minds like Confucius, Buddha, and the Zen masters have offered solace and guidance for thousands of years. This is a place where philosophy becomes poetry, where complex ideas transform into simple truths that can cradle your mind as you drift towards sleep. Before we begin our exploration, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from tonight. Are you tucked beneath blankets in Singapore as the city hums outside your window, or perhaps watching the stars emerge over the quiet countryside in Wales? Drop a comment and let me know what time it is where you are. There's something deeply comforting about knowing this peaceful community spans across continents and time zones, all of us sharing in these moments of reflection. If you find these gentle philosophical wanderings helpful for your evening wind down, a quiet tap on the like button helps more fellow seekers find their way here. And if you'd like to join me for more explorations of wisdom and wonder, the subscribe button is always there, waiting patiently like a meditation cushion. Now, I should probably warn you that I hope this video isn't too stimulating to keep you awake, but if it does, at least you'll drift off with some beautiful Eastern wisdom floating through your thoughts. And that seems like a rather lovely way to enter the realm of dreams. So settle in, let your breathing slow, and allow the ancient voices of the East to whisper their secrets as we explore how philosophy can become the gentlest companion to sleep. The East has always understood something profound about the nature of peace. While the Western mind often races towards solutions, Eastern philosophy invites us to pause, to breathe, to find stillness in the very center of life's storms. Tonight, we'll discover how these timeless teachings can become a bridge between the busy thoughts of day and the tranquil surrender of night. Picture, if you will, ancient China in the time of Confucius, over 2,500 years ago. The world was turbulent then, much as it can feel now. Kingdoms rose and fell. People struggled with the same human concerns that keep us awake at night. Uncertainty about the future, relationships that felt complicated, the weight of responsibility, the search for meaning. Into this restless world came a teacher whose name was Confucius, though history would remember him as Confucius, and his gentle wisdom would echo through millennia. Confucius didn't speak of grand cosmic mysteries or supernatural powers. Instead, he focused on something beautifully simple and practical: how to live well with others, how to find peace within ourselves, how to create harmony in our daily lives through small, thoughtful actions. There's something deeply soothing about this approach, isn't there? The idea that wisdom doesn't require us to climb mountains or abandon the world, but simply to treat each person we meet with kindness and respect. One of his most enduring teachings flows like water over smooth stones. Do not impose on others what you do not wish for yourself. This golden thread of reciprocity weaves through so many spiritual traditions, but Confucius expressed it with such elegant simplicity. As you lie there tonight, perhaps you can let this thought settle gently in your mind. Tomorrow's interactions, the people you'll encounter, the words you'll choose, all of it guided by this one peaceful principle. The Confucian path speaks of something called Ren, often translated as humanness or benevolence. But it's deeper than simple kindness. It's the recognition that we're all interconnected, that your peace and my peace are not separate things. When you cultivate patience with the difficult person at work, when you offer understanding instead of judgment, when you choose gentleness over harshness, you're not just being nice. You're participating in the great web's a story about of harmony that holds the world together. They're Confucius that I find particularly calming. A student once asked him what he would do first if he were given the power to govern a kingdom. The student expected to hear about laws or armies or grand reforms, but Confucius smiled and said he would first correct the use of language. When words have their proper meanings, he explained, then speech becomes truthful. When speech is truthful, then actions can be proper. When actions are proper, then relationships flourish. And when relationships flourish, then peace naturally follows. What a gentle revolution this suggests, not changing the world through force, but through the careful, honest use of our words. Tonight, As your mind perhaps reviews the conversations of the day, you might find comfort in knowing that tomorrow offers fresh opportunities to speak with clarity and kindness, to say what you mean and mean what you say, to use language as a tool of connection rather than separation. The Confucian ideal of the Yunzi, the exemplary person, isn't about perfection. It's about continuous cultivation, like tending a garden. Each day we water the seeds of virtue with our choices. We pull the weeds of selfishness and anger. We create space for patience and understanding to grow. This isn't exhausting work when viewed through Eastern eyes. It's as natural and necessary as breathing, as gentle as rain falling on fertile soil. As we drift from the structured gardens of Confucian thought toward the deeper mysteries of Buddhism, the landscape changes. Where Confucius focused on social harmony, the Buddha turned his attention to something even more fundamental, the nature of suffering itself, and how we might find genuine peace in a world that often feels anything but peaceful. Imagine yourself in ancient India, in a grove of trees where the air is warm and the light filters softly through leaves. Here sits a man, a prince who was once named Siddhartha Gautama, who gave up palaces and privileges to seek understanding seen all. He had age, sickness, and death for the first time, and these encounters with life's inevitable challenges had shaken him awake from the comfortable dream of his sheltered youth. The Buddha's first teaching after his enlightenment was beautifully simple and profoundly challenging. Life contains suffering. This suffering has a cause. There is a path beyond suffering, and there are practices that can lead us along that path. These Four Noble Truths don't promise that life will become easy, but they offer something perhaps more valuable. They offer understanding, and with understanding comes a kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. What causes our suffering according to the Buddha? Not the events of life themselves, but our endless grasping after things to be different than they are. Our resistance to change, our attachment to outcomes we cannot control, our constant craving for pleasure, and our desperate attempts to avoid pain. It's like trying to hold water in cupped hands. The tighter we squeeze, the more it slips away. But here's where Buddhist wisdom becomes genuinely comforting. The solution isn't to stop caring about anything. It's to learn a different way of caring, one that allows for impermanence and uncertainty. It's the difference between holding a butterfly with clenched fists and letting it rest gently on your open palm. In the first case, you destroy what you love. In the second, you can appreciate its beauty while accepting that it will eventually fly away. The Buddha spoke of the middle way, a path between extreme indulgence and harsh deprivation. This isn't just about food or material pleasures, it's about finding balance in all aspects of life. Not pushing yourself to exhaustion in pursuit of goals, but also not giving up on growth and learning. Not clinging desperately to relationships, but also not withdrawing from human connection. Not demanding that life be perfect, but also not resigning yourself to misery. There's profound gentleness in this approach. Buddhist meditation isn't about forcing the mind into some unnatural state of blankness. It's about learning to observe your thoughts and feelings with the same kind curiosity you might watch clouds drifting across the sky. Some are dark and stormy, others light and cheerful. But none of them last forever, and none of them define the vast blue awareness in which they appear and disappear. The concept of impermanence runs like a golden thread through all Buddhist teaching, and it's perhaps one of the most comforting truths philosophy has ever offered. Whatever difficult emotion you're experiencing right now, whatever challenging situation you're facing, whatever pain seems too heavy to bear, this too shall pass. Not because you're forcing it to change, but because change is the fundamental nature of all existence. Even your thoughts right now, as you listen to these words, are constantly shifting and flowing. The breath moving in and out of your body, the subtle sounds in your environment, the play of light and shadow behind your closed eyelids. Everything is in motion, everything is temporary, and somehow this recognition of impermanence brings not anxiety, but relief. You don't have to hold on to anything too tightly because nothing was meant to be permanent anyway. The Buddhist understanding of compassion extends this gentle acceptance to all beings. When you truly understand that everyone is struggling with the same fundamental challenges of existence, the same fears and hopes and confused attempts to find happiness, then judgment naturally softens into understanding. The person who cut you off in traffic, the colleague who spoke harshly, the family member who disappointed you, they're all trying to avoid suffering and find peace, just like you. They're just using different methods, some more skillful than others. As we move deeper into the night and into the realm of Zen, the philosophy becomes even more subtle, more like poetry than prose. Zen emerged from the meeting of Buddhism and Chinese Taoism, creating something entirely unique. Where other schools of thought build elaborate systems of understanding, Zen points directly to the simple truth of this present moment. Picture a Japanese garden at dawn, where every element has been placed with perfect attention. The raked gravel, the single stone, the carefully pruned pine tree. Nothing is excessive, nothing is missing. This is the aesthetic of Zen, but it's also its philosophy. Reality is already complete exactly as it is. Enlightenment isn't something you achieve through years of study or practice. It's something you recognize in the ordinary miracle of right now. The Zen masters had a peculiar way of teaching that often involved riddles called koans. What is the sound of one hand clapping? What was your original face before your parents were born? These aren't puzzles to be solved with logical thinking. They're invitations to step beyond the endless chatter of conceptual mind into direct experience. But you don't need to wrestle with ancient riddles to taste the essence of Zen. It's present in the simple act of drinking tea with complete attention, in feeling your feet against the floor, in listening to the sound of rain without needing to think about rain. Zen suggests that the peace we're seeking isn't hiding in some distant future state of achievement. It's available right here, in the texture of this moment. There's a famous Zen saying that captures this beautifully. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The activities don't change, but the quality of attention does. You begin to find the sacred in the mundane, the extraordinary in the ordinary. Your evening routine of brushing teeth and preparing for bed becomes a kind of meditation. The feeling of sheets against skin becomes a doorway to presence. This quality of attention, this gentle awareness that Zen cultivates, transforms everything it touches without changing anything at all. The same cup of tea becomes an entire universe when you truly taste it. The same breath becomes a teacher when you truly feel it. The same moment of lying in bed becomes a gateway to peace when you stop rushing toward what is, there tomorrow, and simply rest in something profoundly restful about the Zen approach to thoughts and emotions. Rather than fighting with difficult feelings or trying to think your way out of problems, Zen invites you to notice everything with the same spacious awareness. Your worries about tomorrow's meeting, your replaying of today's conversations, your plans and regrets and hopes. All of these mental movements arise and pass away like waves on the surface of a deep, still lake. The lake doesn't reject the waves or try to make them different. It simply provides space for them to dance their brief dance before dissolving back into stillness. Your awareness is like that lake, vast and accommodating, naturally peaceful beneath whatever temporary storms might be stirring on the surface. One of the most beautiful aspects of Zen wisdom is its embrace of not knowing. In our culture, we're often uncomfortable with uncertainty, with questions that don't have clear answers. But Zen suggests that this not knowing mind is actually our most natural state, and perhaps our most peaceful one. When you release the burden of having to figure everything out, when you allow mystery to be mysterious, something relaxes deep inside. The great Zen master Suzuki Roshi called this beginner's mind, approaching each moment with fresh eyes, as if encountering it for the very first time. Even the most familiar experiences, like the feeling of your pillow against your cheek or the sound of your own breathing, become new and wonderful when met with this innocent attention. This beginner's mind naturally leads us toward one of the most central concepts in all Eastern philosophy, the understanding of wu-wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. This Taoist principle, which deeply influenced Zen, suggests that the most powerful and peaceful way to move through life is like water flowing around obstacles rather than crashing against them. Imagine water in a mountain stream, always finding the path of least resistance yet gradually carving through solid rock. It doesn't force or struggle or demand that the landscape change to accommodate it. It simply flows, naturally and persistently, shaping the world through gentle persistence rather than violent effort. In your own life, Wu Wei might look like responding to challenges with flexibility rather than rigid resistance. It might mean working with your natural rhythms rather than against them, recognizing when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain silent. There's an art to this, a kind of wisdom that can't be learned from books but must be felt in the body, understood through experience. The Taoist sages spoke of this as following the Tao, the natural way of things, the underlying pattern that governs all existence. But you don't need to understand cosmic principles to benefit from this wisdom. You can feel it in the way your body naturally wants to stretch when you've been sitting too long, in the way your mind naturally wants to rest when you've been thinking too hard, in the way your heart naturally opens when you encounter genuine kindness. As these Eastern streams of wisdom flow together in your awareness, you might notice how they all point toward the same essential truth. Whether it's Confucius teaching about harmony through virtue, Buddha revealing the path beyond suffering, or Zen masters pointing toward the peace of this present moment, they all invite us to stop fighting against life and learn instead to dance with it. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means discovering a different kind of strength, one that comes from alignment rather than opposition, from understanding rather than force. It's the strength of bamboo that bends with the storm rather than breaking, the strength of water that eventually wears away the hardest stone. In the quiet hours before sleep, this ancient wisdom offers something precious. It suggests that you don't need to solve all your problems tonight, don't need to plan every detail of tomorrow, don't need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You can trust that there's a deeper intelligence at work in life, a pattern too vast for any individual mind to grasp completely. The Chinese concept of yin and yang beautifully illustrates this trust in life's natural rhythms. Day and night, activity and rest, speaking and silence, holding on and letting go. These aren't opposites at war with each other, but complementary aspects of a greater wholeness. Right now, as evening deepens into night, you're participating in this eternal dance, allowing the active yang energy of day to give way to the receptive yin energy of rest and renewal. Your mind, which has outward all been reaching day toward tasks and responsibilities and concerns, can now turn inward toward the quiet center where peace has always been waiting. This isn't something you have to create or achieve. It's something you can simply remember, like recognizing an old friend you'd forgotten was there. The ancient Chinese poet Lao Tzu wrote about returning to the source, going back to the original simplicity that exists before all our complications and elaborations. This return isn't a regression, but a homecoming, a recognition of what was always true beneath all the surface turbulence of daily life. In Taoist thought, this source is called the Tao, the way that cannot be named but can be followed, the mystery that cannot be grasped but can be lived. It's present in the effortless way plants grow toward light, in the natural rhythm of seasons changing, in the spontaneous smile that crosses your face when you see something beautiful. Tonight, as you settle deeper into rest, you're participating in this same natural intelligence. Your body knows how to heal itself while you sleep. Your mind knows how to process the day's experiences into wisdom. Your heart knows how to soften and open even after the hardest days. You don't have to manage any of this consciously. You can simply trust the deeper knowing that operates beneath the level of thinking. The Zen tradition speaks of this trust as great faith. Not faith in any particular doctrine or belief system, but faith in the fundamental okayness of existence itself. Even when life feels difficult or confusing, even when you can't see the path forward clearly, there's something in you that knows how to keep breathing, how to keep loving, how to keep finding moments of beauty and connection. This great faith naturally leads to what Zen calls great doubt, not the kind of doubt that makes you cynical or hopeless, but the kind that keeps you open and curious, that prevents you from thinking you have everything figured out. It's the doubt that says maybe there's more to this moment than I'm seeing, maybe there's more to this person than I'm understanding, maybe there's more to this life than I'm appreciating. And from great faith and great doubt arises great determination, not the grasping kind of determination that exhausts itself trying to force outcomes, but the gentle persistence of water wearing away stone, the quiet commitment to keep showing up with presence and kindness regardless of circumstances. These three pillars of Zen practice, faith, doubt, and determination, support a way of living that's both deeply engaged and profoundly peaceful. You care deeply about life while holding your caring lightly. You work toward positive change while accepting what cannot be changed. You strive for growth while resting in what you already are. As these philosophical streams continue to flow through your awareness like gentle rivers converging in a peaceful valley, you might notice how your breathing has naturally slowed, how your muscles have gradually released their daily tensions, how your mind has settled into a quieter rhythm. This isn't something you've forced to happen, it's something you've allowed, the way Eastern wisdom always works, not through effort, but through yielding, not through grasping, but through letting go. The ancient masters understood that peace is not a destination to reach, but a dimension of this moment to recognize. It's not something you have to create, but something you can uncover, like brushing dust away from a mirror to reveal the clarity that was always there. Your essential nature, according to all these traditions, is already peaceful, already whole, already free. The practices and teachings simply help you remember what you've temporarily forgotten in the business of daily living. Tonight, as you rest in this remembering, you're not just finding personal peace, but participating in something much larger. Every moment of genuine tranquility, every breath of real contentment, every instant of true presence contributes to the healing of our world. The peace you cultivate in your own heart ripples outward in ways you may never fully know, touching other lives, influencing other hearts to the sum, adding total of wisdom and compassion in existence. This is perhaps the most beautiful teaching of all Eastern philosophy, that your individual awakening and the awakening of all beings are not separate processes, but one seamless movement of consciousness recognizing itself, love discovering itself, peace coming home to itself through countless forms and expressions. So as you lie there tonight, wrapped in the gentle embrace of these ancient teachings, let yourself rest in this profound interconnectedness. You're not separate from the peace that Buddha found beneath the Bodhi tree, or the harmony that Confucius cultivated in his relationships, or the presence that Zen masters discovered in the simplest acts of daily life. These are not distant achievements of exceptional people, but natural expressions of what you already are, temporarily obscured perhaps by the accumulated dust of worry and hurry, but never truly lost. In Chinese philosophy, there's a beautiful concept called ziren, which means naturalness or spontaneity. It points to the effortless way things unfold when they're not forced or manipulated, like flowers blooming in spring or rivers finding their way to the sea. Your journey toward peace has this same quality of ziren, when you stop pushing so hard against life and learn instead to move with its natural rhythms. Think of how a tree grows. It doesn't strain or struggle to reach toward the light, it simply follows its nature, extending branches and leaves in the direction of nourishment. There's no anxiety in this reaching, no fear that it won't be enough. The tree trusts the intelligence that guides its growth, the same intelligence that beats your heart and heals your wounds and dreams your dreams while you sleep. The Taoist sage Zhuangzi told a story about this kind of natural wisdom. A man named Cook Ding was so skilled at butchering an ox that his knife never dulled, never met resistance. When asked about his technique, he explained that he didn't cut through bones or force his way through joints. Instead, he found the natural spaces, the places where the structure wanted to separate, and his blade moved through like a gentle breeze. This is Wu Wei in action, accomplishing everything by forcing nothing. In your own life, you might discover these natural spaces, these places where effort becomes effortless, because you're working with reality rather than against it. It might be the pause between thoughts where clarity emerges without thinking. It might be the moment when you stop trying to control a conversation and suddenly find yourself truly listening. It might be the instant when you release your grip on how things should be and notice how beautiful they already are. Buddhist teaching speaks of this recognition as awakening, but it's important to understand that awakening isn't a dramatic event that happens once and changes everything forever. It's more like dawn breaking, a gradual brightening that can happen again and again, each time revealing the landscape of your life with fresh eyes. Every moment offers the possibility of this gentle awakening, this soft recognition of what's actually true right now. The Buddha described consciousness like space itself, vast and accommodating, capable of holding all experiences without being disturbed by any of them. Your anger and your joy, your fears and your hopes, your memories and your dreams, all arise and pass away within this spacious awareness like clouds moving through an infinite sky. The sky isn't threatened by storms, isn't diminished by darkness, isn't improved by sunshine. It simply provides room for whatever appears. This understanding naturally cultivates what Buddhists call equanimity, a quality of peaceful balance that doesn't depend on circumstances being pleasant. It's not indifference or emotional numbness, but rather a deep stability that can remain calm in the midst of life's inevitable ups and downs. Like a mountain that remains serene whether the weather is stormy or clear, equanimity allows you to experience all of life's flavors without being overwhelmed by any of them. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught about this through the simple practice of mindful breathing. Each inhalation, he suggested, could be a return to the present moment. Each exhalation, a letting go of whatever no longer serves. Breathing in, I know this is an in-breath. Breathing out, I know this is an out-breath. Such simple words, yet they point to something profound, the possibility of finding refuge in the most basic act of being alive. Your breath, right now as you listen to these words, is a teacher that never stops offering lessons. It shows you how to receive without grasping, how to give without losing, how to flow between holding and releasing in perfect rhythm. It demonstrates the middle way that Buddha spoke of, neither forcing nor neglecting, neither rushing nor lagging, but finding the natural pace that sustains life. In Zen monasteries, this attention to breath becomes a gateway to what they call shikantaza, or just sitting. It's a form of meditation that isn't trying to achieve any particular state or experience. You simply sit and allow whatever arises to arise, whatever passes to pass, maintaining a quality of open awareness that judges nothing and rejects nothing. It's meditation without agenda, presence without purpose, and paradoxically, this purposelessness becomes the most purposeful thing you can do. The great Zen teacher Dogen wrote extensively about this practice, describing it as the embodiment of Buddha nature itself. You're not sitting in order to become enlightened, he taught. Your sitting is already the expression of your inherent enlightenment. This moment of awareness, this capacity to know that you're knowing, this consciousness that's aware of itself, this is already the awakening that all spiritual practice points toward. As you rest there tonight, you might sense this Buddha nature not as something exotic or foreign, but as the most intimate aspect of your being. It's what's aware of your thoughts, what witnesses your emotions, what experiences your experiences. It's closer to you than your breath, more fundamental than your heartbeat, more essential than your name or your history or your plans for tomorrow. The Confucian understanding of human nature offers a complementary perspective, emphasizing our inherent capacity for goodness and growth. Confucius believed that every person possesses what he called ren, often translated as benevolence or human-heartedness. This isn't a moral rule imposed from outside, but a natural expression of our deepest identity. When you feel moved by someone else's suffering, when you experience genuine joy at another's success, when you find yourself wanting to help rather than harm, this is ren flowering naturally in your heart. Mencius, one of Confucius's most important followers, illustrated this with a beautiful example. If you saw a child about to fall into a well, he said, your immediate response would be to reach out and help, not because you expected reward or recognition, but because compassion is your natural state. This spontaneous movement toward caring, toward connection, toward the well-being of others, reveals something fundamental about who you are beneath all your surface concerns and calculations. This innate goodness doesn't mean you're perfect or that you never make mistakes. The Confucian path acknowledges human fallibility while maintaining faith in human potential. Like a gardener who tends to plants with patience and skill, you can cultivate the seeds of virtue that already exist within you. Each act of kindness strengthens your capacity for kindness. Each moment of patience deepens your well of peace. Each choice to respond with wisdom rather than reactivity builds your character like muscles growing stronger through gentle, consistent exercise. The Chinese concept of li, often translated as ritual or propriety, might seem formal or rigid to modern minds, but Confucius understood it as something much more alive and creative. Li isn't about following rules mechanically, but about finding graceful ways to honor the relationships and responsibilities that give life meaning. It's the pause before speaking when you're angry, allowing wisdom to replace reactivity. It's the bow of acknowledgement when someone helps you, recognizing the gift of their presence. It's the quiet moment of gratitude before meals, appreciating the web of life that sustains your body. These small ceremonies of attention transform ordinary moments into opportunities for awakening. When you brush your teeth with full awareness, you're practicing li. When you listen to a friend with genuine interest rather than planning your response, you're embodying ren. When you choose your words carefully to build bridges rather than walls, you're following the Confucian way of harmony through conscious of this cultivation. The beauty approach is that it meets you exactly where you are. You don't need to retreat from the world or abandon your responsibilities to walk the path of wisdom. Your daily interactions become your spiritual practice. Your work becomes your meditation. Your relationships become your teachers. Every moment offers an invitation to respond with a little more awareness, a little more kindness, a little more presence than the moment before. As these eastern streams continue to weave through your consciousness, you might notice how they all point toward the same essential recognition. Whether it's the Buddhist understanding of interconnectedness, the Confucian emphasis on relational harmony, or the Zen appreciation of present moment awareness, they all invite you to see through the illusion of separation that causes so much of our suffering. The Indian concept of namaste captures this beautifully, often translated as "I bow to you." It actually means something more profound. The divine in me recognizes the divine in you. It's an acknowledgement that beneath all our surface differences, all our varying opinions and preferences and personalities, there's something universal and sacred that we share. When you truly see another person from this perspective, how can there be enemies? How can there be strangers? How can there be anyone who doesn't deserve your compassion? This recognition naturally dissolves the artificial boundaries that the thinking mind creates between self and other, between inside and outside, between sacred and ordinary. The Zen master who finds enlightenment while washing dishes, the Confucian scholar who discovers wisdom in conversation with a child, the Buddhist meditator who awakens to the sound of a bell, they're all pointing to the same truth. The extraordinary is hidden in plain sight within the ordinary. The infinite dwells within the finite. The sacred is present in every mundane moment, waiting to be recognized. Tonight, as your body settles deeper into rest and your mind releases its grip on the day's concerns, you're participating in this same recognition. The pillow supporting your head, the air flowing in and out of your lungs, the darkness that allows your eyes to rest, the silence that gives your ears a break from noise. All of these simple elements of your bedtime experience are expressing the same generous intelligence that moves the stars and grows the flowers and beats your heart without any conscious effort on your part. The Taoist understanding of this intelligence calls it the Tao that cannot be spoken, the way that flows through all things yet belongs to none of them. It's the pattern that connects the flight of birds to the spiral of galaxies, the rhythm of your breathing to the cycles of seasons, the beating of your heart to the pulse of waves upon the shore. You don't need to understand this pattern intellectually to benefit from it. You simply need to align yourself with it, like a sailor adjusting their sails to catch the wind. This alignment happens naturally when you stop fighting against what is and learn instead to dance with reality as it actually presents itself. It's the difference between swimming upstream and floating downstream, between pushing against a door marked pull and pausing to read the sign. Life becomes effortless not because there are no challenges, but because you're working with the grain of existence rather than against it. The ancient Chinese spoke of this as following the watercourse way, moving like water that always finds its level, always flows toward its destination, always takes the path of least resistance while gradually transforming everything it touches. Water doesn't argue with rocks or complain about valleys. It simply flows, and in flowing, It shapes the very landscape through which it moves. Your consciousness has this same fluid quality when it's not hardened by resistance or frozen by fear. Thoughts arise and flow away like streams merging and separating. Emotions surface and dissolve like waves on the ocean. Experiences come and go like weather patterns across the vast sky of awareness. Nothing sticks, nothing stagnates. Everything moves in its natural rhythm when you're not grasping or pushing, or trying to make things different than they are. This fluid awareness naturally leads to what the Zen tradition calls don't know mind, a state of openness that doesn't pretend to have all the answers. It's the humility that recognizes the mystery is always deeper than our understanding, the wonder that keeps us curious rather than closed, the beginner's mind that approaches each moment with fresh eyes rather than stale assumptions. Don't know mind isn't ignorance or confusion, but rather a wise not knowing that leaves room for surprise, for discovery, for the universe to reveal itself in unexpected ways. When you hold your opinions lightly, when you remain open to learning something new, when you approach even familiar experiences with curiosity rather than automatic reaction, you create space for genuine wisdom to emerge. This openness is particularly healing as you prepare for sleep because it allows you to release the burden of having to figure everything out tonight. You don't need to solve tomorrow's problems or understand the meaning of today's challenges or plan every detail of next week's schedule. You can trust that the same intelligence that grew you from a single cell into the complex, beautiful being you are today will continue to guide your path whether you're awake or asleep, conscious or dreaming, actively planning or simply allowing. The Korean Zen tradition speaks of this trust as just don't know, a phrase that points beyond intellectual understanding toward direct experience. Just don't know what will happen tomorrow, and that's perfectly fine. Just don't know how things will work out, and that's actually a relief. Just don't know what the future holds, and that leaves room for possibilities you haven't even imagined yet. This don't know mind naturally cultivates what Buddhists call prajna, often translated as wisdom, but really meaning a kind of knowing that transcends ordinary thinking. It's the wisdom that knows without words, understands without concepts, recognizes truth without needing to analyze or categorize it. It's the wisdom of the heart that knows you're loved even when you feel lonely. The wisdom of the body that knows how to heal, even when you feel broken. The wisdom of the soul that knows you're connected to everything, even when you feel isolated. As you rest in this natural wisdom tonight, allowing these ancient teachings to settle into your awareness, like snow falling silently on a peaceful landscape, remember that you're not trying to become something you're not. You're simply remembering what you've always been beneath all the accumulated layers of worry and hurry, beneath all the stories of inadequacy and struggle, beneath all the temporary identities that you've collected along the way. The Eastern Masters all point to this same recognition, whether they call it Buddha nature or original face or the Tao or the source. They're all indicating something that's already present, already perfect, already free. It's not something you achieve through years of practice or mountains of study. It's something you uncover through the gentle process of letting go, like cleaning dust from a mirror to reveal the clarity that was always there. Tonight, as you journey deeper into rest and renewal, you carry with you the blessings of countless teachers who walked this path before you. Their wisdom lives not in ancient books, but in your own capacity for presence, your own potential for peace, your own natural ability to love and be loved. The same moon that illuminated Buddha's awakening is shining somewhere in your sky tonight. The same stars that guided ancient sages are still offering their quiet light. The same eternal now that revealed itself to Zen masters throughout the centuries is available to you in this very moment. There's something profoundly beautiful about the way Eastern philosophy approaches the question of time itself. While Western minds often race toward future goals or replay past mistakes, the Eastern understanding invites us to discover the eternal quality that exists within each passing moment. Time, according to these ancient teachings, is not a river we're swept along by, but an ocean we're floating in, vast and spacious and always present beneath whatever waves of experience might be stirring on the surface. The Chinese concept of kairos speaks to this different relationship with time. Unlike us, which measures minutes and hours and days, kairos points chron to the fullness of the present moment, the quality of attention that transforms ordinary time into something sacred. It's the difference between watching a clock and watching a sunset, between counting breaths and feeling the miracle of breathing, between marking days on a calendar and recognizing the gift of being alive right now. In your own evening routine, you might have noticed glimpses of this timeless time. Perhaps it's the moment when you first settle into bed and everything becomes quiet and still. Perhaps it's the pause between finishing one task and beginning another, when for just an instant there's nowhere to go and nothing to do. Perhaps it's the space between thoughts, when the mind rests in its own natural silence like a bird settling on a branch. These moments of kairos are always available, scattered throughout your day like hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. The Eastern masters learned to recognize them not as rare exceptions, but as doorways into the deeper rhythm that underlies all of life's apparent hurry and worry. When you step through these doorways, time doesn't disappear but transforms, becoming spacious rather than pressing, generous rather than scarce, friendly rather than threatening. The Zen teacher Huang Po spoke of this transformation with characteristic directness. This very moment, he taught, is the Buddha. Not some future moment when you've finally gotten everything figured out. Not some past moment when life felt easier. But this one, exactly as it is, with all its imperfections and uncertainties and simple ordinariness. This radical acceptance of now doesn't mean you stop growing or learning or working toward positive change. It means you stop postponing your peace until conditions improve. Buddhist psychology offers a fascinating perspective on why we find it so difficult to rest in the present moment. The mind, according to these teachings, has developed the habit of constantly seeking either pleasure or security, constantly trying to move toward what it likes or away from what it dislikes. This endless seeking creates what they call havatanha, the thirst for becoming, the restless craving to be somewhere else, someone else, someone else. But here's the gentle paradox that Buddhist wisdom reveals. The peace and happiness we're seeking through this constant becoming is already present in the simple act of being. Not being someone special, or being in some perfect situation, but just being, just existing. Just breathing in and out with the same natural ease that flowers bloom and rivers flow and stars shine in the darkness. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop caring about your life and relationships and responsibilities. Rather, you discover a different way of caring, one that's rooted in presence rather than anxiety, in love rather than fear, in trust rather than control. It's the difference between a mother bird frantically pushing her chicks from the nest and the same mother bird patiently teaching them to fly, working with their natural development rather than against it. The Confucian understanding of cultivation offers a beautiful complement to this Buddhist insight. Where Buddhism emphasizes being, Confucianism emphasizes becoming, but becoming in a way that's gentle and sustainable and deeply respectful of natural timing. Like a farmer who plants seeds in spring and trusts the seasons to do their work, the Confucian approach to personal growth recognizes that virtue and wisdom unfold according to their own organic schedule. Confucius spoke of this as the way of the yunzi, the exemplary person who grows in character not through force or haste, but through consistent, patient attention to small daily choices. Each moment of choosing kindness over cruelty, patience over anger, honesty over deception, is like adding a drop of pure water to a clear pool. The individual drops seem insignificant, but over time they create something beautiful and refreshing that nourishes not only yourself, but everyone whose life you touch. This cultivation happens naturally when you approach your life with what Mencius called a childlike heart, maintaining the wonder and openness and innate goodness that children express so effortlessly. It's not about becoming childish, but about remaining childlike, keeping alive that capacity for surprise and delight and genuine curiosity that makes each day feel fresh rather than routine. Watch how a child encounters the world. They don't analyze a butterfly before appreciating its beauty. They don't need to understand the physics of bubbles to laugh with joy when soap bubbles float through the air. They don't require guarantees about the future before they engage wholeheartedly with the present moment. This natural wisdom, this direct engagement with life, is what the Eastern masters mean when they speak of returning to original simplicity. The Taoist sage Lao Tzu described this return as becoming like an uncarved block, piu in Chinese. Before a piece of wood is carved into a specific shape, it contains infinite potential. It could become a bowl or a statue or a walking stick or 1,000 other forms. But once it's carved, its possibilities become fixed. The uncarved block represents your essential nature before it's shaped by limiting beliefs and rigid identities and narrow definitions of who you think you should be. Tonight, as you rest in the darkness, you might sense this uncarved quality within yourself. Beneath all your roles and responsibilities and accumulated experiences, there's something that remains fresh and open and full of potential. It's what allows you to learn new things at any age, to form new relationships, to discover new sources of joy and meaning even after decades of living. This essential freshness never ages, never becomes stale, never loses its capacity for growth and renewal. The Chinese understanding of Wu Wei, which we touched on earlier, emerges naturally from this recognition of your uncarved nature. When you're not forcing yourself into predetermined shapes, when you're not trying to become something other than what you naturally are, then action becomes effortless, spontaneous, perfectly appropriate to each situation as it arises. It's like water finding its way down a mountainside, always choosing the path of least resistance yet eventually reaching the sea. This effortless action isn't lazy or passive. Think of a master calligrapher whose brush moves across paper with fluid grace, each stroke emerging from deep practice and concentrated attention, yet appearing completely spontaneous. Or consider a jazz musician who has studied scales and harmonies for years, but in performance lets the music flow through them without forcing or calculating. This is Wu Wei in expression. Skillful means that emerge from deep understanding rather than surface effort. In your daily life, Wu Wei might manifest as knowing exactly what to say to comfort a friend without rehearsing the words beforehand. It might be the way you naturally adjust your driving to changing traffic conditions without stress or anger. It might be the Intu tells you when to speak it if timing that, and when to remain silent in a difficult conversation. These moments of effortless appropriateness are available to everyone because they arise from the same natural intelligence that governs all of life's processes. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh beautifully illustrated this natural intelligence through his teachings on walking meditation. Instead of walking to get somewhere, he suggested, what if you walked simply to be walking? Instead of rushing from point A to point B, what if each step became a moment of arriving, a celebration of the miracle that you can move through space on two legs, that the earth supports you, that your body knows how to balance and coordinate hundreds of muscles without any conscious direction from your thinking mind. This quality of attention transforms everything it touches. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on the flow of water and the texture of ceramic and the simple satisfaction of making something clean. Folding laundry becomes an appreciation for the hands that can perform such delicate tasks and the clothes that protect and warm your body. Preparing food becomes a ritual of gratitude for the sun and soil and rain that grew your vegetables, for the countless people whose labour brought nourishment to your table. When you approach ordinary activities with this extraordinary attention, the daily life begins boundary between meditation to dissolve. You don't need to set aside special times for spiritual practice because every moment becomes an opportunity for awakening. Every activity becomes a doorway into presence. Every encounter becomes a chance to express your deepest values. The Korean Zen tradition speaks of this integration as meditation in action, maintaining the same quality of awareness whether you're sitting quietly on a cushion or moving through the complexities of modern life. It's not about creating some special state of consciousness that you have to protect from contamination by ordinary concerns. It's about recognizing that your natural awareness is already vast enough to include everything, already peaceful enough to remain calm amid chaos, already whole enough to embrace all of life's apparent contradictions. This recognition naturally leads to what Buddhist psychology calls mudita, often translated as sympathetic joy or appreciative happiness. It's the capacity to feel genuine pleasure in other people's success and well-being, even when your own life feels challenging. It's the opposite of envy or comparison. arising instead from the understanding that happiness is not a limited resource that becomes scarce when others possess it. Like the light of one candle that can light 1,000 others without diminishing its own flame, joy multiplies when it's shared rather than hoarded. Mudita is particularly healing because it dissolves the artificial sense of separation that creates so much suffering in human relationships. When you can genuinely celebrate your friend's promotion even though you're struggling at work, when you can feel happy about your neighbor's new relationship even though you're feeling lonely, when you can appreciate someone else's talents even though you're worried about your own abilities, then you're tasting the freedom that comes from recognizing your fundamental interconnectedness with all life. This interconnectedness isn't just a philosophical concept, but a lived reality that becomes more apparent as your practice deepens. The air you breathe was recently part of trees and other people, and perhaps clouds floating over distant oceans. The atoms in your body were forged in the hearts of ancient stars and will continue their journey long after your current form dissolves back into the elements. The thoughts and feelings moving through your consciousness are influenced by countless encounters with other minds, other hearts, other streams of awareness flowing through the vast network of existence. The Zen understanding of emptiness, sunyata, points to this profound interconnectedness. When Buddhism speaks of things being empty, it doesn't mean they don't exist, but rather that they don't exist independently, separately, permanently. Everything arises in relationship, exists in relationship, and passes away in relationship. Your sense of being a separate self is like a wave thinking it's independent of the ocean, temporarily distinct, but never actually separate from the vast water that gives it form and substance. This understanding naturally cultivates what Tibetan Buddhism calls bodhicitta, the awakened heart that recognizes its unity with all beings. It's the compassion that arises not from duty or obligation, but from the simple recognition that there's really no other to bed. When you help compassionate towards someone who's suffering, you're caring for another face of your own deeper nature. When you treat someone with kindness, you're watering the seeds of kindness in your own heart. When you work for the healing of the world, you're participating in your own healing. This awakened heart doesn't require you to become a saint or dedicate your life to dramatic acts of service. It expresses itself most naturally in small gestures of care and attention. Listening fully when someone is speaking to you, offering a genuine smile to a stranger who seems sad, pausing before responding with anger when someone has hurt your feelings, choosing words that build bridges rather than walls. These simple acts of love are how enlightenment manifests in daily life, how the abstract becomes practical, how wisdom transforms into compassion. The Confucian concept of Ren, which we explored earlier, shares this same emphasis on practical love expressed through respectful relationships. But Confucius understood that this love must begin with yourself, with what he called self-cultivation, or xu-yang. You cannot give what you don't have, cannot offer peace if you're consumed by inner turmoil, cannot extend genuine kindness if you're harsh and critical with your own mistakes and limitations. This self-cultivation isn't selfish or narcissistic when approached from the Eastern perspective. It's like maintaining your car so it can reliably serve your transportation needs, or keeping your garden tools sharp so they can effectively help your plants grow. When you take care of your own mind and heart through meditation and study and ethical living, you become more capable of taking care of others, more available to respond to life's challenges with wisdom rather than reactivity. The Chinese practice of Qigong beautifully embodies this understanding of self-cultivation as service to others. These gentle movements and breathing exercises are designed to cultivate and balance your life energy, your ki, not for personal power or advantage, but for the overall harmony of the system you're part of. When your energy is clear and flowing, you contribute to the clarity and flow of energy in your family, your community, your workplace, the entire web of relationships you're embedded in. You don't need to learn complex Qigong forms to benefit from this principle. Simply paying attention to your breath, maintaining good posture, moving your body regularly, eating nourishing food, getting adequate rest. These basic acts of self-care are ways of maintaining your energy so you can show up more fully for whatever life asks of you. They're not indulgent but responsible, not selfish but generous, not separate from spiritual practice but integral to it. The Japanese aesthetic concept of wabi-sabi offers another doorway into this integrated approach to living. Often translated as finding beauty in imperfection, wabi-sabi actually points to something deeper. The recognition that impermanence and imperfection are not obstacles to beauty but essential elements of it. The tea bowl with a crack that's been mended with gold. The garden where wildflowers grow among carefully tended plants. The face that shows lines of laughter and concern earned through years of living fully. This aesthetic teaches us to appreciate life as it actually is, rather than constantly comparing it to some imaginary perfect version. Your body with its particular strengths and limitations, your mind with its unique patterns of thinking and feeling, your circumstances with their specific mixture of challenges and opportunities. All of this is already perfect in its imperfection, already beautiful in its temporary, changing, utterly human form. When you can embrace this wabi-sabi perspective, something profound shifts in your relationship to yourself and your life. You stop waiting for everything to be fixed before you can be happy. You stop postponing joy until you've solved all your problems. You stop withholding love until you've become worthy of it. Instead, you begin to appreciate the rough beauty of your actual experience, finding the sacred hidden within the ordinary, recognizing the extraordinary nature of simply being alive in this moment, breathing in and out, aware and present and capable of love. This appreciation naturally extends to your relationship with sleep itself. Instead of seeing rest as time lost or productivity sacrificed, the Eastern perspective invites you to recognize sleep as one of life's great teachers. In sleep, the ego mind that usually tries to control everything finally relaxes its grip. In dreams, the rigid boundaries between self and other, possible and impossible, past and future become fluid and permeable. In deep dreamless rest, you return temporarily to the source from which all experience arises, the pure awareness that Buddhists call Rigpa and Taoists call the unborn. Tonight, as you surrender to this ancient rhythm of waking and sleeping, you're participating in one of the most profound spiritual practices available to human beings. You're practicing letting go, releasing control, trusting the intelligence that operates beyond the reach of your conscious mind. You're allowing your body to heal and restore itself, your mind to process and integrate the day's experiences, your heart to soften and open in the safety of darkness and silence. The Zen tradition speaks of this surrender as great death, not because sleep is dangerous, but because it requires the temporary death of the ego that thinks it needs to manage everything, figure out everything, remember everything, plan everything. In sleep, you practice dying to this false sense of separate selfhood and awakening to your true nature as pure awareness, boundless and unborn, intimately connected to the vast mystery that breathes through all life. This great death happens every night, offering you countless opportunities to practice for the ultimate letting go that will come at the end of this lifetime. But it also happens in smaller ways throughout each day. Every time you release a worry, every time you forgive someone who's hurt you, every time you choose presence over planning, acceptance over resistance, love over fear. The ancient masters understood that these small deaths and rebirths are how consciousness evolves, how wisdom deepens, how the heart gradually opens to embrace more and more of life's infinite richness. Each moment of letting go creates space for something new to emerge. Each practice of surrender allows life to reveal possibilities you couldn't have imagined from the limited perspective of the controlling mind. As you rest in this understanding tonight, surrounded by the darkness that makes rest possible, cradled by the silence that allows your nervous system to settle, supported by the earth that holds you while you sleep, remember that you're not separate from these forces of renewal and restoration. You are them, temporarily taking the form of a human being who can recognize their own essential nature, who can appreciate the miracle of consciousness aware of itself, who can love and be loved and find peace in the midst of an ever-changing world. The Eastern streams of wisdom all flow toward this recognition, this homecoming to what you've always been beneath all the surface turbulence of personality and circumstance. Whether you call it Buddha, nature, or original face, or the Tao, or simply your true self, it's closer than your breath, more fundamental than your thoughts, more reliable than your emotions, more enduring than your body. Tonight, as these ancient teachings settle into your awareness like gentle rain soaking into fertile soil, trust that their wisdom will continue to work in you even as you sleep. Trust that the same intelligence that guides the stars in their courses and the seasons in their cycles is guiding your own journey of awakening, bringing you exactly the experiences you need for your growth and healing and service to the world. Sleep well, dear friend, knowing that you carry within yourself all the peace and wisdom and love that the greatest masters ever discovered. Rest in the confidence that this moment, exactly as it is a perfect expression of the infinite mystery that is your deepest identity. And wake tomorrow with fresh eyes to see the beauty that's always been surrounding you, fresh ears to hear the teachings that life is constantly offering, and a fresh heart to love more freely than you did today. The way is always under your feet. The teacher is always in your heart. The peace you seek is always available in this eternal, now that never comes or goes, but simply is, forever present, forever welcoming you home. The gentle wisdom of the East teaches us that seeking is often the very thing that prevents us from finding what we've always possessed. In the quiet hours of evening, when the world begins its slow transition from activity to rest, this paradox becomes particularly clear. The peace you've been searching for through books and teachers and practices has never been absent from this moment. It's been waiting patiently, like a faithful friend, for you to stop looking elsewhere and recognize its constant presence. There's a beautiful story from the Zen tradition about a student who traveled thousands of miles to find a famous master. When he finally arrived at the remote monastery, exhausted from his journey, he bowed deeply and asked, "Master, please teach me the way to enlightenment." The old teacher smiled and pointed to a tree in the courtyard where birds were singing their evening songs. "Do you hear that?" he asked. The student listened and nodded. "Then you already understand everything I could possibly teach you." This story isn't about dismissing the value of learning or practice. It's about recognizing that the awakeness you're seeking is already fully present in your capacity to hear, to see, to be aware of this very moment. The consciousness that knows you're listening to these words, that experiences your breath moving in and out, that witnesses your thoughts arising and passing away. This is already the enlightened mind that all spiritual traditions point toward. The Chinese concept of Ming, often translated as destiny or fate, offers another perspective on this inherent completeness. But Ming doesn't refer to some predetermined script that removes your freedom to choose. Rather, it points to the unique pattern of your life, the particular way that universal consciousness expresses itself through your individual form and circumstances. Like a river that follows the contours of the landscape while carving its own channel, you're both shaped by the conditions you encounter, and actively shaping your path through how you respond to those conditions. Understanding Ming brings a quality of relaxation to life's challenges. The difficulties you face aren't punishments or mistakes, or signs that you're on the wrong path. They're the very conditions through which your particular wisdom and compassion are being cultivated. The relationship that challenges you to practice patience, the work situation that tests your integrity, the health issue that invites you to appreciate each day more fully. These are not obstacles to your spiritual development, but integral. The Taoist sage parts of it, Chuang Tzu illustrated this with characteristic humor through the story of a gnarled, twisted tree that had grown so ugly that no carpenter would cut it down for lumber. While all the straight, beautiful trees were harvested and turned into buildings that eventually decayed, the ugly tree lived for hundreds of years, providing shade for travelers and shelter for countless birds and small animals. Everyone knows the usefulness of the useful, Chuang Tzu observed, but no one knows the usefulness of the useless. Perhaps there are aspects of yourself that you've considered flaws or limitations, qualities that don't fit the conventional definitions of success or beauty or worthiness. The Eastern perspective invites you to consider that these apparently useless parts of your nature might serve purposes you haven't yet recognized. Your sensitivity that others call weakness might be exactly what allows you to offer comfort to suffering hearts. Your tendency to question everything that others call pessimistic might be precisely what keeps you honest and authentic in a world full of shallow certainties. The Japanese practice of forest bathing, or shinrin-yoku, embodies this appreciation for what might seem useless or unproductive. Instead of hiking through the woods to reach a destination, or burn calories, or check something off a list, forest bathing involves simply being present among trees, breathing forest air, allowing your nervous system to synchronize with the slower rhythms of the natural world. Scientific research has confirmed what Eastern wisdom has always known. This apparently purposeless activity reduces stress hormones, boosts immune function, and restores mental clarity more effectively than many goal-oriented pursuits. In your own life, you might discover similar opportunities for beneficial uselessness. The few minutes you spend watching clouds drift across the sky, the time you invest in listening to a child tell a rambling story, the moments you pause to really taste your tea instead of gulping it down while checking your phone. These apparently unproductive activities are actually profound practices, ways of remembering that your value doesn't depend on constant achievement, that peace isn't something you earn through effort but something you allow through presence. The Buddhist concept of beginner's mind, which we touched on earlier, naturally leads to what Zen calls don't know mind. This isn't ignorance or confusion, but rather a wise humility that recognizes the limitations of conceptual understanding. When you hold your opinions lightly, when you remain open to surprise, when you approach even familiar situations with curiosity rather than assumption, you create space for genuine insight to emerge. Don't know mind is particularly relevant in our age of information overload, when it's tempting to believe that having access to vast amounts of data somehow makes us wiser. But the Eastern masters understood that knowledge and wisdom are different qualities entirely. Knowledge is something you accumulate, while wisdom is something you uncover. Knowledge can be stored in books and databases, while wisdom can only be lived and embodied. Knowledge often makes us more confident in our opinions, while wisdom makes us more comfortable with uncertainty. Tonight, as you rest in the embrace of not knowing what tomorrow will bring, you might discover a surprising sense of relief. You don't have to have all the answers figured out. You don't have to understand the meaning of every experience or predict the outcome of every situation. You can trust that the same intelligence that coordinates the intricate dance of your organs, that guides your body's healing processes, that orchestrates the complex ecosystem of your thoughts and emotions, will continue to operate whether you consciously direct it or not. The Confucian understanding of education offers a beautiful complement to this trust in natural intelligence. The Chinese character for learning combines the symbols for studying and constant practice, suggesting that genuine education isn't about memorizing information, but about cultivating wisdom through ongoing experience. Confucius himself said, "I never refuse instruction to anyone who sought it, even if they could only afford to offer me a bundle of dried meat as payment." This wasn't about the payment, but about the sincerity of the seeker, the genuine desire to grow in understanding and virtue. True learning, from this perspective, happens everywhere and all the time. Your conversation with a grocery store clerk becomes a lesson in human connection. Your observation of how plants respond to light becomes a teaching about natural wisdom. Your experience of feeling frustrated in traffic becomes an opportunity to practice patience and compassion. Every moment offers curriculum if you approach it with the right spirit, the willingness to be taught by life itself. This educational attitude transforms difficulties from problems to be solved into teachers to be welcomed. The Eastern approach doesn't promise that challenges will disappear, but it suggests that your relationship to challenges can transform completely. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to wonder, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" Instead of resisting difficult emotions, you learn to greet them as messengers carrying important information about your inner landscape. The Tibetan Buddhist practice of Tonglen beautifully illustrates this transformed relationship to difficulty. Instead of trying to push away suffering, practitioners deliberately breathe it in, imagining that they're taking on not only their own pain, but the pain of all beings everywhere who are experiencing similar struggles. Then they breathe out relief, peace, and healing, offering these gifts to all those who need them. This practice sounds counterintuitive to minds trained to avoid discomfort, but it actually creates a profound sense of connection and purpose that transforms suffering from a burden into a doorway to compassion. You don't need to practice formal Tonglen to benefit from its wisdom. Simply allowing yourself to feel your emotions fully, without trying to fix them or make them go away, begins to dissolve the resistance that amplifies suffering. When you're sad, you can be completely sad without judging yourself for not being happy. When you're anxious, you can acknowledge the anxiety without adding the extra layer of anxiety about being anxious. When you're angry, you can feel the energy of anger without suppressing it or expressing it harmfully. This emotional honesty is what the Zen tradition calls just sitting with what is, and it's one of the most radical practices available to modern people. We're so accustomed to constantly doing something about our experiences, to fixing or changing or improving or escaping, that simply being present with whatever arises feels revolutionary. Yet this simple presence is the foundation of all genuine transformation. The ancient Chinese medical tradition understood this principle through the concept of qi, the life energy that flows through all living beings. When qi flows freely, health and vitality naturally result. When it becomes blocked or stagnant, illness and suffering emerge. But the goal isn't to force qi to flow or willpower. Instead, traditional to manipulate it through practices like acupuncture and qigong work, by removing obstacles to natural flow, creating conditions where the body's innate wisdom can reassert itself. Your emotional and mental health follow similar principles. Peace and happiness aren't states you create through effort, but natural expressions of your essential nature when obstacles are removed. The obstacles aren't usually external circumstances, though those can certainly be challenging. More often they're internal patterns of resistance, judgment, and attempts to control what can't be controlled. As you lie there tonight, you might experiment with this principle by simply noticing whatever is present without trying to change it. The sounds in your environment, the sensations in your body, the thoughts moving through your mind, the emotions coloring your experience. What if all of this is already perfect exactly as it is? What if your peace doesn't depend on anything being different, but simply on your willingness to be present with what's actually happening right now? The Korean Zen master Seung-san used to teach this through a simple question. What are you? Not who are you, with all your social roles and personal history and future plans, but what are you in this very moment before thinking creates categories and labels? This question points beyond all the temporary identities you've accumulated towards something more fundamental, more stable, more intimately you than any concept could capture. You might discover that what you are is simply awareness itself, the spacious knowing in which all experiences appear and disappear like clouds in an infinite sky. This awareness isn't something you possess, but something you are. Not a quality of your mind, but your mind's essential nature. Not an achievement of spiritual practice, but the very capacity that makes any practice possible. The Sufi poet Rumi, though from a different tradition, expressed this same recognition with characteristic beauty. You're not just the drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in each drop. This isn't poetic exaggeration, but a precise description of consciousness as Eastern mysticism understands it. Your individual awareness isn't separate from the universal awareness that manifests as all experience everywhere. It's like a wave that temporarily forgets it's made of the same water as every other wave, then suddenly remembers and laughs at the cosmic joke of ever thinking it was alone. This recognition naturally dissolves what Buddhism calls the three poisons that cause suffering: greed, hatred, and delusion. When you truly understand your interconnectedness with all life, how can there be greed for more than you need? When you recognize that harming others is literally harming yourself, how can hatred persist? When you see through the illusion of separation, how can delusion maintain its grip on your perception? These poisons don't disappear overnight or understanding alone. They're through intellectual dissolved gradually, through the patient practice of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom applied to the countless small time you choose life. Each make up daily moments that generosity over selfishness, you weaken greed's hold. Each time you respond to aggression with understanding, you dissolve a little more hatred. Each time you see through the stories your mind tells about how things should be different, you clear away another layer of delusion. The beautiful thing about this transformation is that it happens naturally when you stop forcing it. like flowers opening to sunlight or ice, melting in spring warmth. The heart knows how to unfold into its natural state of love when the conditions are right. You create those conditions not through struggle, but through gentle, consistent attention to the present moment, through kindness toward yourself and others, through the gradual cultivation of what the Buddha called right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These 8 aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path aren't commandments imposed from outside, but descriptions of how life naturally unfolds when it's aligned with wisdom and compassion. Right speech emerges spontaneously when you're truly present with others. Right action flows naturally when you understand your interconnectedness with all beings. Right concentration develops effortlessly when you stop fighting with your own mind and learn instead to rest in its natural stillness. The path isn't about becoming something you're not, but about removing the obstacles that prevent your true nature from shining forth. It's like polishing a mirror that's been covered with dust. The capacity to reflect clearly was always there, hidden beneath the accumulated grime of unconscious habits and reactive patterns. The polishing doesn't create the mirror's reflective nature, but simply reveals what was always present. Tonight, as you rest in the growing stillness of evening, you might sense this natural clarity becoming more apparent. The busy thoughts of the day gradually settling, like sediment in a glass of muddy water that becomes transparent when left undisturbed. The tensions and concerns that seemed so pressing a few hours ago softening into a more spacious perspective. The identity of someone who has problems to solve and goals to achieve dissolving into the simpler recognition of awareness, aware of itself. This isn't escapism or denial of your human responsibilities and relationships. It's a return to the source from which all skillful action arises, the still center from which you can respond to life's challenges with wisdom rather than reactivity. Like a skilled archer who draws the bowstring back toward herself in order to send the arrow accurately toward its target, you withdraw periodically into this inner stillness in order to engage more effectively with the world. The Chinese practice of Wu Wei, which we explored earlier, emerges from this centered stillness. When you're not driven by comp emotions, when impulsive thinking or reactive, you're resting in your natural awareness, then appropriate action arises spontaneously. You say exactly what needs to be said, do exactly what needs to be done, remain silent exactly when silence is needed. This isn't planning or calculating, but responding from a deeper intelligence that sees the whole situation rather than just your personal concerns within it. In relationships, Wu Wei manifests as the ability to listen without already formulating your response, to be present with someone's pain without immediately trying to fix it, to offer help when it's truly needed rather than when it makes you feel useful. In work, it appears as the natural timing that knows when to push forward with a project and when to wait for conditions to ripen. In creative endeavors, it's the flow state where inspiration moves through you without obstruction. These moments of effortless effectiveness are available to everyone because they arise from the same natural intelligence that governs all life processes. The key is learning to get out of your own way, to trust the wisdom that operates beneath the level of conscious control, to align yourself with the deeper currents that move through existence rather than swimming against them. The Zen understanding of enlightenment describes this alignment not as a special state you achieve, but as your natural condition once obstacles are removed. It's like the sun that's always shining, but sometimes appears hidden by clouds. The clouds are temporary and passing, while the sun's light is constant and reliable. Similarly, your essential nature of awareness, peace, and love is always present, sometimes obscured by the passing clouds of thought and emotion, but never actually diminished or damaged by them. This perspective brings tremendous relief to the spiritual journey, because it means you're not trying to become someone else or achieve some distant goal. You're simply remembering who you've always been beneath all the conditioning and confusion. You're not building something new, but uncovering something eternal. You're not fixing what's broken, but recognizing what was never actually damaged. The Tibetan concept of Rigpa points to this indestructible essence of your being. Even in your most difficult moments, even when you feel lost or confused or overwhelmed, Rigpa remains untouched, like space that can hold storms without being disturbed by them. This isn't a theory or belief, but something you can directly experience through meditation and mindful attention to the present moment. Tonight, as you settle deeper into rest, you might sense this spacious quality of your own awareness. Notice how thoughts arise and pass away within it, like bubbles rising to the surface of water. Observe how emotions appear and dissolve within it, like weather patterns moving across the sky. Feel how even your sense of being a separate self is just another temporary appearance within this vast, unchanging awareness that is your deepest identity. This recognition doesn't make you feel empty or disconnected, but rather intimately connected to everything. When you realize that the same awareness looking through your eyes is looking through every pair of eyes, hearing through every ear, thinking through every pair of ears, 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 thinking through every pair of ears,
thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair of ears, thinking through every pair, every mind, then the illusion of loneliness becomes impossible to maintain. You're never actually alone because you are the very presence in which all experience occurs. The Eastern masters often use the metaphor of dreams to illustrate this unity. In your nighttime dreams, you might encounter many different characters, landscapes, and situations. But when you wake up, you realize that everything in the dream was actually your own mind appearing in various forms. The person you were talking to, the mountain you were climbing, the house you were visiting, all of it was consciousness taking temporary shapes within the space of awareness. The mystics suggest that waking life has the same structure. All the apparently separate people and objects and experiences you encounter are actually consciousness appearing in countless forms, like actors wearing different costumes in an elaborate play. This doesn't make life meaningless or illusory, but rather reveals its deeper significance. Every encounter becomes a meeting with yourself in another form. Every act of kindness becomes a way of loving yourself. Every moment of beauty becomes a recognition of your own essential nature. This understanding naturally cultivates what the Buddhists call metta, or loving kindness, not as an emotional feeling you have to generate, but as a recognition of what's already true. When you see through the apparent separateness to the underlying unity, how can there be anyone who doesn't deserve your love? When you understand that helping others is literally helping yourself, how can there be any conflict between self-care and service to others? The practice of metta begins with offering loving kindness to yourself, not because you're selfish, but because you can't give what you don't have. May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be at peace, may I live with ease. These aren't requests made to some external deity, but acknowledgements of your own deepest wishes, recognitions of what your heart naturally wants for all beings everywhere. As this loving kindness stabilizes in relationship to yourself, it naturally extends to others. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be at peace, may you live with ease. First to those you love easily, then to neutral people, then even to those who have hurt you or whom you find difficult. This isn't forced or artificial, but a natural expansion of the heart that recognizes no real boundaries between self and other. The ultimate expression of metta embraces all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be at peace. May all beings live with ease. This isn't just a nice sentiment, but a recognition of your actual relationship to existence. When any being anywhere suffers, something in you suffers. When any being anywhere experiences joy, something in you celebrates. You're not separate from the web of life, but an integral part of it, temporarily individualized but never actually alone. This understanding transforms even your sleep into a form of service. As you rest and restore yourself, you're contributing to the healing of the collective human body. As you process your own experiences and emotions in dreams, you're participating in the larger work of consciousness integrating and evolving. As you surrender to the mystery of unconsciousness, and then return to awareness each morning,
You're practicing the great letting go that all beings must eventually master. The Eastern perspective sees sleep not as a break from spiritual life, but as one of its most essential aspects. In sleep, the ego mind that usually tries to control everything finally releases its grip. In dreams, the boundaries between possible and impossible become permeable, allowing new insights and perspectives to emerge. In deep, dreamless rest, you return temporarily to the source from which all experience arises, the pure awareness that Advaita Vedanta calls Brahman and Buddhism calls Buddha nature. Tonight, as you journey into these deeper layers of consciousness, remember that you're not leaving the spiritual path but entering one of its most sacred territories. The darkness that allows your eyes to rest is the same darkness from which all light emerges. The silence that gives your ears a break from sound is the same silence from which all music arises. The stillness that allows your body to heal is the same stillness from which all movement flows. In this darkness, silence, and stillness, you're returning to the creative source that is your deepest identity. Not the personal self with its particular history and concerns, but the universal self that manifests as all experience everywhere. This isn't a loss of individuality, but a discovery of what individuality actually is. A unique expression of the infinite, a temporary crystallization of the eternal, a singular note in the cosmic symphony that gains its meaning through relationship to the whole. Rest well in this understanding, dear friend. Let the ancient wisdom of the East cradle you as you surrender to sleep, knowing that you're held by the same intelligence that moves the stars and grows the flowers and beats your heart without any effort on your part. Trust that tomorrow will bring exactly what you need for your continued growth and service, and that tonight offers exactly what you need for rest and renewal. The way is always present. The teacher is always available. The peace you seek is always here, closer than your breath, more intimate than your thoughts, more reliable than your emotions. Sleep is simply another doorway into this eternal presence, another opportunity to remember what you've always been beneath all the temporary costumes of personality and circumstance. May your dreams be filled with wisdom, and your rest be deep and complete. May you wake tomorrow with fresh eyes to see the beauty that surrounds you, and a fresh heart to love more freely than today. And may you always remember that you are both the seeker and the sought, the question and the answer, the wave and the ocean, forever at peace in the heart of the mystery that is your own true nature. The ancient Chinese understood that true strength isn't found in rigid resistance, but in flexible responsiveness, like the willow tree that bends in fierce storms while the mighty oak, standing proud and unyielding, crashes to the ground. This quality of adaptive resilience, what they called ruin, speaks to something profound about how we might navigate the inevitable storms of our own lives with greater grace and less suffering. Picture water encountering a stone in its path. It doesn't argue with the obstacle or exhaust itself trying to push through by force. Instead, it finds a way around, over, or gradually through, maintaining its essential nature while accommodating the reality it meets. This isn't weakness or surrender, but a different kind of wisdom, one that recognizes that persistence and flexibility can coexist beautifully. In your own experience, you've likely noticed moments when this natural flexibility emerged without conscious effort. Perhaps it was the day your carefully planned schedule fell apart, yet somehow everything still worked out in unexpected ways. Or the conversation that went completely differently than you'd rehearsed, yet led to deeper understanding than any script could have provided. These experiences hint at a way of engaging with life that's both purposeful and spontaneous, directed yet open to redirection. The Japanese have a beautiful word for this quality, mizumoshi, literally water consciousness, describing a mind that maintains its clarity while flowing around whatever obstacles it encounters. This isn't about becoming passive or indifferent, but about developing what we might call intelligent flexibility, the ability to respond skillfully to changing circumstances without losing your essential center. This water-like quality of consciousness naturally leads us toward one of the most profound teachings in Eastern philosophy, the understanding that resistance to what is already happening creates most of our suffering. Not the difficult circumstances themselves, but our internal struggle against accepting their temporary reality, It's like being caught in quicksand, where struggling makes you sink deeper, while remaining calm and making gentle, purposeful movements leads to freedom. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a simple practice for cultivating this acceptance without resignation. When facing any challenging situation, he suggested silently saying, "Breathing in, I acknowledge this difficulty. Breathing out, I smile to my ability to be present with it." This isn't about pretending problems don't exist or forcing yourself to feel happy about painful circumstances. It's about finding the stability that comes from not adding the extra layer of suffering that comes from fighting against what has already occurred. This practice of acknowledgement without resistance creates what the Tibetan Buddhists call sky-like mind, awareness that remains spacious and clear regardless of what weather patterns might be moving through it. Storms may rage, clouds may gather, sunshine may break through, but the sky itself remains untroubled, providing space for whatever needs to unfold. Your awareness has this same sky-like quality when it's not contracted around particular preferences or aversions. The ancient Taoist text known as the I Ching, or Book of Changes, offers 64 different patterns for understanding how change moves through our lives. But beneath all these specific configurations lies one fundamental principle. Everything flows in cycles, and wisdom lies in learning to flow with these natural rhythms rather than exhausting yourself trying to swim upstream. The farmer doesn't plant seeds in winter or harvest crops in spring, but works with the seasons rather than against them. Your own life follows similar seasonal patterns, though they may not align with the calendar. There are times for planting new projects and relationships, times for nurturing growth, times for harvesting the fruits of your efforts, and times for letting go of what has run its course. Learning to recognize which season you're in, both globally and in specific areas of your life, allows you to work with your natural rhythms rather than against them. Sometimes the season you're in is one of apparent dormancy, like winter fields that look barren but are actually gathering strength for spring's explosion of growth. These periods can feel frustrating to minds trained to equate activity with progress, but they're often the most important times for deep restoration and preparation for what's coming. The seed must rest in dark soil before it can reach toward light. Other times you find yourself in spring seasons of new beginnings, when possibilities seem to multiply faster than you can explore them. These periods call for different qualities: openness to opportunity, willingness to take thoughtful risks, the energy to nurture new growth. The wisdom lies not in forcing spring to arrive before its time, but in recognizing it when it comes and responding appropriately. Summer seasons in your life are times of full expression and abundant manifestation, when projects mature and relationships deepen, and your efforts bear visible fruit. These can be wonderful periods, but they also require the wisdom to pace yourself, to remember that even summer eventually gives way to autumn, and to appreciate the gifts of the present without clinging to them as permanent fixtures. And then there are the autumn seasons, times of harvest and release, when you gather the wisdom gained from your experiences and let go of what no longer serves your growth. These transitions can feel melancholy, but they're essential for making space for new cycles to begin. The tree that refuses to release its autumn leaves may find its branches broken by winter storms. The Eastern understanding of time includes this cyclical dimension that Western linear thinking sometimes misses. Progress isn't always measured by forward movement, but sometimes by deepening, by spiraling back through familiar territory at a different level of understanding. You may find yourself facing similar challenges or questions that you thought you'd already resolved, but now with greater capacity, deeper wisdom, more compassionate perspective. This spiral nature of growth explains why meditation and mindfulness practices can feel repetitive to beginners. You're not doing the same thing over and over without purpose, but returning again and again to fundamental awareness, each time with slightly more stability, clarity, and ease. Like a mountain climber who follows switchback trails that seem to double back on themselves but actually gain elevation with each turn, your practice may seem to cover familiar ground while actually lifting you to new levels of understanding. The Chinese concept of Li, which we touched on earlier, encompasses this understanding of natural rhythm and appropriate timing. Li is often translated as ritual or ceremony, but it actually points to something much more dynamic. The art of responding to each moment with exactly the right energy, words or actions that the situation calls for. It's like being a skilled jazz musician who knows when to play and when to pause, when to harmonize and when to improvise, when to lead the melody and when to support others. In daily life, Lee might manifest as knowing intuitively when someone needs advice and when they just need someone to listen. It could be the natural timing that tells you when to speak up in a meeting and when to remain silent, when to push forward with a project and when to wait for conditions to ripen. This isn't a skill you learn through memorizing rules, but a sensitivity you develop through paying attention to the subtle rhythms that flow through all interactions. The practice of tea ceremony in both Chinese and Japanese traditions beautifully embodies this principle of Li. Every movement has purpose, every gesture reflects awareness, every pause creates space for appreciation. But this isn't rigid adherence to prescribed forms. A true tea master brings fresh presence to each ceremony, allowing the particular qualities of the tea, the weather, the guests, the moment to inform how the ritual unfolds. The forms serve awareness rather than constraining it. You might discover similar opportunities for ceremony in your own daily routines. The way you prepare your first cup of coffee in the morning, the moment you pause before entering your home at the end of the day, the ritual of turning off lights and settling into bed each evening. These ordinary activities can become gateways to presence when approached with the same attention you might bring to any sacred practice. The Korean concept of nunchi offers another doorway into this quality of sensitive responsiveness. Often described as social intuition or emotional intelligence, nunchi actually points to something deeper. The ability to read the subtle energies of any situation and respond in ways that create harmony rather than discord. It's like having internal radar that senses not just what people are saying, but what they're feeling. Not just what's happening on the surface, but what deeper currents are moving underneath. Nunchi develops naturally when you learn to listen with your whole being rather than just your ears, to observe with your heart as well as your eyes, to sense the emotional climate of any environment you enter. This isn't about becoming hypervigilant or losing yourself in others' emotions, but about developing the sensitivity that allows you to contribute to collective well-being through your presence and responses. In relationships, nunchi manifests as knowing when to offer comfort and when to give someone space to process their feelings alone. In work environments, it appears as sensing when team energy is flagging and offering exactly the right kind of encouragement or break that the situation needs. In social gatherings, it's the awareness that guides you toward conversations that nourish rather than drain, topics that unite rather than divide. This quality of sensitive awareness naturally leads to what Buddhists call right speech, one of the aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech isn't about following rigid rules about what you can and cannot say, but about developing the wisdom to recognize which words will heal and which will harm, which conversations will lead toward greater understanding and which will simply create more confusion and conflict. The practice begins with internal speech, the constant commentary that runs through most people's minds. When you notice your inner voice becoming harsh or critical, either toward yourself or others, you can experiment with softening its tone. This isn't about suppressing difficult thoughts or forcing positivity, but about cultivating the same kindness internally that you'd offer to a good friend who was struggling. This internal gentleness naturally extends into how you speak with others. Words become tools for building bridges rather than weapons for winning arguments. Conversations become opportunities for mutual discovery rather than competitions for who can be right. Even difficult discussions can unfold with respect and care when they're guided by the intention to understand rather than to dominate. The ancient Chinese practice of calligraphy embodies many of these principles in visual form. Each brushstroke requires complete presence, perfect timing, and acceptance of whatever emerges. There's no erasing or correcting in traditional calligraphy, only the practice of bringing total attention to this moment, this breath, this movement of brush across paper. The beauty that emerges isn't from perfection, but from presence, not from controlling the outcome, but from participating fully in the process. Your life has this same quality of irreversible creativity. Each day, each conversation, Each choice creates marks on the canvas of time that cannot be undone, only integrated into the larger pattern that's emerging through your existence. The wisdom lies not in trying to control every brushstroke, but in bringing presence and intention to whatever you're creating right now, trusting that beauty can emerge from imperfection when it's infused with awareness and care. This understanding naturally dissolves the anxiety that comes from trying to live life perfectly. The Chinese aesthetic principle of wabi-sabi, which found its fullest expression in Japanese culture, celebrates the beauty that emerges from transience, imperfection, and incompleteness. The tea bowl with a visible crack, the garden where wildflowers grow among cultivated plants, the poem that captures truth through suggestion rather than explicit statement. Your own life, with its particular mixture of success and failure, joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion, already embodies this wabi-sabi beauty. The relationships that didn't work out taught you about love. The jobs that ended led you toward new opportunities. The plans that fell apart created space for unexpected gifts. Even your mistakes and regrets are part of the pattern that makes you uniquely you, in the cosmic web irreplaceably valuable of existence. The Zen understanding of impermanence, which can initially feel frightening to minds that crave security, actually becomes a source of tremendous freedom when fully embraced. If everything is temporary, then your current difficulties are temporary. If nothing lasts forever, then you don't have to hold on to anything too tightly. If change is the only constant, then you can trust that whatever you're experiencing right now will eventually transform into something else. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to your life or relationships, but rather loving them with open hands instead of clenched fists. Like watching a beautiful sunset, you can appreciate the moment fully while accepting that it will soon give way to night, and that night will eventually yield to dawn. The beauty lies not in making the sunset permanent, but in being fully present for its brief, unrepeatable display. The Tibetan practice of Bardo meditation specifically trains practitioners to recognize the transitional spaces that exist between all experiences. Bardo literally means in between, and it refers not just to the transition between death and rebirth, but to the gap between thoughts, the pause between breaths, the moment of uncertainty before making any decision. These spaces of not knowing, rather than being problems to be quickly filled, are actually doorways to freedom. In your daily life, you encounter countless bardos without necessarily recognizing them. The moment when you wake up but haven't yet started thinking about the day ahead. The pause between finishing one task and beginning another. The instant when someone asks you a question before your mind formulates a response. These gaps in the usual flow of mental activity are opportunities to touch the spacious awareness that underlies all experience. Learning to rest in these natural pauses, rather than rushing to fill them with activity or thought, gradually develops what the Tibetan masters call gap awareness. This isn't about creating artificial gaps through forced meditation, but about noticing the spaces that are already present in every moment and allowing yourself to relax into them. It's like discovering that between every two notes of music, there's silence, and that this silence is actually what makes the music possible. This gap awareness naturally extends your capacity to remain centered during transitions and uncertainties. When you're comfortable with not knowing, you don't need to rush into premature decisions or cling to familiar patterns that no longer serve you. You can rest in the creative potential of open space, trusting that clarity will emerge in its own timing, rather than forcing it through anxiety or overthinking. The Chinese understanding of yin and yang offers another perspective on these transitional spaces. Most people think of yin and yang as opposites, but they're actually complementary aspects of a single dynamic process. Light and shadow, activity and rest, speaking and listening, holding on and letting go. These apparent opposites actually depend on each other for their meaning and create balance through their interplay. Your daily rhythm naturally includes both yin and yang phases, though modern culture tends to overemphasize yang qualities like productivity, achievement, and external focus, while undervaluing yin qualities like receptivity, restoration, and inner reflection. Learning to honor both aspects creates a more sustainable and satisfying way of living, like breathing, that includes both inhalation and exhalation, rather than trying to inhale constantly. Yin time in your life might look like long baths, gentle walks in nature, unstructured conversations with friends, creative activities that don't have specific goals, or simply sitting quietly without any agenda. These activities aren't lazy or unproductive, but essential for maintaining the inner resources that make yang activities possible. You can't pour from an empty cup, as the saying goes, and yin time is what keeps your cup filled. Yang time includes the more active, directed aspects of life: work projects, exercise, social engagements, learning new skills, organizing your environment. These activities are fulfilling and necessary, but they become exhausting and counterproductive when they're not balanced with adequate yin restoration. The art lies in finding the rhythm that works for your particular constitution and circumstances. The ancient Taoist practice of Qigong beautifully integrates yin and yang principles through gentle movements that cultivate and balance life energy. But you don't need to learn formal Qigong to benefit from its underlying wisdom. Simply paying attention to your body's signals for when it needs activity, and when it needs rest, when it craves stimulation, and when it seeks quiet, when it wants to engage with others, and when it needs solitude. Your body is constantly communicating its needs through subtle sensations, energy levels, and impulses. Learning to listen to these signals with the same attention you might give to a wise teacher gradually develops what the Chinese call body wisdom, the ability to make choices that support your overall well-being rather than fighting against your natural rhythms. This body wisdom extends beyond physical needs to emotional and mental patterns as well. Just as your body has natural cycles of hunger and satisfaction, activity and rest, your emotions and thoughts also flow in patterns that can be observed and respected rather than controlled or suppressed. Anger naturally gives way to calm when it's allowed to flow without being fed or suppressed. Sadness naturally transforms into acceptance when it's met with compassion rather than resistance. The key insight that all Eastern traditions share is that fighting against these natural cycles creates suffering, while flowing with them creates freedom. This doesn't mean becoming passive or fatalistic, but rather learning to work with the grain of existence instead of against it. Like a skilled sailor who uses wind and current to reach their destination, rather than trying to power through by force alone. Tonight, as you settle into the natural rhythm of rest that your body's calling for, you're participating in one of the most fundamental cycles of existence. The same intelligence that guides planets in their orbits and seasons in their changes is guiding your transition from wakefulness to sleep, from conscious engagement to unconscious restoration, from the yang activity of day to the yin receptivity of night. In this surrender to sleep, you're practicing the ultimate act of trust, letting go of conscious control and allowing deeper wisdom to take over the functions of healing, integration, and renewal. Your dreams, when they come, will be your mind's way of processing experiences and emotions without the interference of waking consciousness. Your deep sleep will be your body's opportunity to repair and restore itself without having to divide attention between inner maintenance and outer engagement. This daily cycle of sleeping and waking mirrors the larger cycles that govern all existence, from the cellular level where death and renewal happen constantly, to the cosmic level where stars are born and die in patterns too vast for human minds to fully comprehend. You're not separate from these cycles, but intimately woven into them, a temporary expression of the same creative intelligence that manifests as everything from galaxies to grass, from mountains to molecules. As you rest in this understanding, let the ancient wisdom of the East continue to flow through your awareness like a gentle stream, carrying away the tensions and concerns of the day, nourishing the seeds of peace and clarity that exist in your deepest nature. Tomorrow will bring its own opportunities for practice and growth, its own invitations to respond with wisdom and compassion, its own chances to embody the timeless teachings that have guided seekers for thousands of years. But tonight your only task is to rest, to trust, to allow the natural intelligence of life to do its healing work, while you surrender to the mystery of consciousness returning to its source. Sleep is not an absence, but a different kind of presence, not a break from the spiritual path, but one of its most essential aspects. Not a time when nothing happens, but when everything that needs to happen can unfold without interference from the busy, helpful, worried mind. Rest well. knowing that you're held by the same love that holds all beings everywhere, guided by the same wisdom that guides all natural processes, supported by the same strength that supports mountains and moves rivers toward the sea. In sleep you return temporarily to the source from which you emerged, and from which you will emerge again each morning, refreshed and renewed, ready to continue the ancient dance of awakening that is the birthright and the purpose of every conscious being. The Eastern masters understood that sleep is not the opposite of awakening, but one of its most profound expressions, the daily practice of letting go that prepares us for the ultimate letting go, the nightly return to source that reminds us of our true home beyond all temporary identities and concerns. Tonight, as every night, you have the opportunity to practice dying before you die, to touch the deathless awareness that is your essential nature, to rest in the peace that passeth understanding and carries you safely through all transitions, both small and great. Sweet dreams, fellow traveller on the pathless path that leads everywhere and nowhere, always arriving at the recognition that you have never left home, never been separate from the wholeness you seek, never been anything other than the love and awareness and peace that you are spending your lifetime learning to remember, recognize, and embody more fully with each passing day and each restful night. The morning light, when it comes, will find you changed in ways too subtle for ordinary perception to detect. This is the mystery of sleep as understood by Eastern wisdom. It is not merely rest, but transformation. Not simply recovery, but renewal at levels deeper than the physical body. The Chinese speak of this nocturnal alchemy as the time when Hun and Po, the ethereal and corporeal souls, engage in their own quiet dialogue, integrating the day's experiences into the larger tapestry of who you are becoming. There's something deeply reassuring about the way Eastern philosophy approaches this daily death and rebirth that we call sleep. Unlike traditions that might see unconsciousness as a void to be feared, the Eastern masters recognize sleep as a return to the creative darkness from which all light emerges, the fertile emptiness from which all form arises, the silence that gives birth to every word and song. The ancient Indian concept of yoga nidra, often called yogic sleep, points to this understanding. It's described as the state between waking and sleeping, where consciousness remains aware while the body and mind enter deep rest. But you don't need to practice formal yoga nidra to touch this liminal space. It's available in those drowsy moments when thoughts become fluid and boundaries between inner and outer begin to soften, when the solid world of daily concerns dissolves into the more liquid reality of approaching dreams. In these threshold moments, the rigid categories that govern waking consciousness naturally relax. Past and future merge into an eternal now. Self and other reveal themselves as temporary distinctions in an undivided wholeness. Problems that seemed insurmountable an hour ago transform into opportunities for growth and learning. This isn't wishful thinking or denial, but a glimpse into the larger perspective that's always available when the analytical mind finally takes its well-deserved rest. The Japanese understanding of mer, the pregnant pause, the meaningful space between things, finds its fullest expression in sleep. All day long, your life is filled with ma, the breath between words in conversation, the moment of silence before applause, the heartbeat's pause between contractions. But sleep is the great mare of human existence, the spacious interval that allows all of life's experiences to settle into wisdom, all of the day's fragmented moments to weave themselves into coherent meaning. Think of a master potter working with clay. The actual shaping happens during active engagement with the material, but the clay must rest between sessions, allowing the water to distribute evenly throughout the structure, letting the form stabilize before the next phase of creation. Your consciousness follows this same rhythm, periods of active engagement with life, alternating with periods of restful integration, each phase essential to the overall process of becoming more fully yourself. This understanding transforms sleep from a necessary interruption of productive activity into a sacred practice, as important as any meditation or prayer. The pillow becomes your meditation cushion, the darkness your temple, the surrender to unconsciousness you're offering to the mystery that sustains all life. There's no need to accomplish anything during these hours, no goal to achieve or state to maintain. The very act of letting go completely is itself the practice. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke of sleep as an opportunity to practice what he called deep ecology of mind, allowing all the artificial boundaries between self and environment to dissolve, recognizing your intimate connection with the air you breathe, the sounds that surround you, the very earth that supports your resting body. In sleep, you don't just dream about interconnection, you live it, becoming porous to influences and energies that the waking mind usually filters out. This porosity is part of what makes sleep so restorative. During waking hours, you necessarily maintain certain boundaries to function effectively in the world. You distinguish between your thoughts and others' thoughts, your emotions and others' emotions, your responsibilities and others' responsibilities. These distinctions are useful for life, but they require navigation through daily to maintain. In constant energy sleep, you can finally let these boundaries become permeable, allowing your individual consciousness to merge temporarily with the larger field of awareness from which it emerged. The Tibetan dream yoga tradition recognizes this as an opportunity for what they call illusory body practice, learning to recognize the dreamlike quality that underlies all experience, whether waking or sleeping. In dreams, you might fly through impossible landscapes or have conversations with people who died years ago, and upon waking, you easily recognize these experiences as mental constructions rather than external realities. The deeper teaching suggests that waking experience has this same constructed quality, appearing solid and separate but actually arising moment by moment within the space of awareness like clouds forming and dissolving in an infinite sky. You don't need to become a dream yoga practitioner to benefit from this perspective. Simply noticing the fluid, creative quality of your dreams can gradually attune you to the fluid, creative quality of waking life as well. The same consciousness that creates entire worlds while you sleep is creating your experience right now, shaping perception through the lens, recognition, and interpretation of memory. Expectizing this doesn't make life less real, but reveals its deeper nature as a collaborative creation between awareness and phenomena, between the knower and the known. The ancient Chinese medical tradition understood sleep as the time when Shen, the spirit, returns to its home in the heart. During waking hours, Shen travels throughout the body and even beyond it, engaging with the external world through the senses and activities, but at night it gathers itself back into the quiet chamber of the heart, where it can rest in its own essential nature, without the distractions of sensory input and social interaction. This return of Shen to the heart is what allows for the deep restoration that no amount of external rest can provide. When Shen is properly housed in the heart during sleep, you wake feeling not just physically refreshed, but spiritually renewed. There's a quality of inner spaciousness, emotional stability, and mental clarity that comes from this nightly homecoming. Conversely, when sleep is restless or insufficient, Shen remains scattered, and the heart cannot provide its proper sanctuary, leading to the agitation and depletion that no amount of caffeine can truly remedy. This traditional understanding offers a different approach to preparing for sleep than simply trying to tire yourself out or shut down mental activity. Instead, it suggests creating conditions that naturally invite Shen home to the heart, dimming external lights to honor the body's circadian rhythms, reducing stimulating inputs that keep consciousness scattered outward, cultivating the quality of inner quietude that makes the heart a welcoming refuge rather than just another place the mind visits in its restless travels. The practice might be as simple as placing your hand on your heart as you settle into bed, silently inviting all the scattered aspects of your day's experience to return to this central sanctuary. Not trying to force anything or make something happen, but simply creating a gesture of welcome, a signal to your own deeper intelligence that it's time for the wandering consciousness to come home and rest. The Sufi tradition, which shares many insights with Eastern philosophy despite its different cultural origins, speaks of sleep as a nightly return to Fana, the mystical state of dissolution in divine love. During waking hours, the ego necessarily maintains its boundaries and preferences, its sense of separate identity and individual will. But in sleep, these constructions naturally soften and dissolve, allowing consciousness to remember its essential unity with the source from which all apparent multiplicity arises, This dissolution isn't a loss but a liberation, not a diminishment but an expansion into your true proportions. Like a wave that stops trying to be separate from the ocean and relaxes back into its essential water nature. In deep sleep, you stop trying to maintain the elaborate construction of individual selfhood and simply rest in being itself, undefined and unlimited by any particular form or identity. The beauty of this nightly return to source is that it happens automatically, without any effort or technique required on your part. You don't have to learn how to dissolve ego boundaries or practice letting go of individual identity. Simply lying down with the intention to sleep naturally initiates this process, trusting the same intelligence that beats your heart and digests your food to guide consciousness back to its origin. This understanding can transform your relationship to insomnia or restless sleep. Instead of fighting against wakefulness or trying to force unconsciousness, you can rest in the awareness that's present even when sleep doesn't come. The same peace that sleep provides, the dissolution of mental boundaries, the release from the day's concerns, the return to essential being, is available right now in the simple recognition of awareness aware of itself, consciousness knowing its own nature. The Chinese concept of shu, often translated as emptiness, but really meaning spaciousness or openness, finds its most natural expression in the transition towards sleep. Throughout the day, consciousness becomes filled with impressions, reactions, plans, and concerns. Like a vessel that gradually fills with water, the mind accumulates content until it feels heavy and overflowing. Sleep provides the opportunity for this vessel to empty itself, returning to the spacious clarity that's your natural state. This emptying isn't a violent purging, but a gentle release, like autumn leaves falling naturally from trees when their time has come. You don't have to push away thoughts or force your mind to become blank. Simply lying still with the intention to rest creates conditions where mental contents can settle and dissolve on their own, like sediment gradually clearing from disturbed water when it's left undisturbed. The Korean practice of nunchi, which we explored earlier as social sensitivity, has an internal dimension that's particularly relevant to sleep preparation. Just as nunchi allows you to read the subtle energies in social situations, internal nunchi develops sensitivity to the rhythms and needs of your own consciousness. You begin to recognize when your mind is naturally ready for rest, versus when it's still processing important material, when your body needs gentle movement versus when it's ready for complete stillness, when your heart is open and peaceful versus when it's carrying tensions that need acknowledgement before sleep can come. This internal sensitivity isn't something you develop through effort, but through patient attention to the subtle signals that are always present. Your body constantly communicates its needs through changes in energy, posture, breathing, and comfort. Your emotions provide information about what's been resolved from the day and what might still need attention. Your thoughts reveal whether consciousness is ready to let go of active engagement or still needs to complete some internal process. Learning to listen to these subtle communications with the same care you might give to a beloved friend, sharing important news gradually develops what the Eastern masters call natural timing, the ability to work with your own rhythms rather than against them, to honor the organic process of consciousness rather than trying to force it into artificial schedules or expectations. The ancient Taoist understanding of Ziran, which means naturalness or spontaneity, suggests that the deepest peace comes not from controlling your experience, but from aligning with the natural intelligence that's already guiding all life processes. Your transition from waking to sleeping is governed by this same intelligence that guides flowers in their opening and closing, birds in their migration patterns, seasons in their eternal cycling. When you stop trying to manage this process and simply trust its inherent wisdom, sleep becomes effortless, arising naturally from the body's own circadian rhythms and the mind's organic need for rest. This trust in natural process extends to dreams as well. Rather than seeing dreams as random mental static or trying to interpret every symbol and narrative, the Eastern approach suggests appreciating dreams as your consciousness of processing experiences and emotions, Intig's creative way rating new insights, and exploring possibilities that the waking mind might not consider. Dreams are your inner artist at work, creating meaning through metaphor and symbol, helping you understand your life through the language of image and feeling rather than logic and analysis. Some nights your dreams may be vivid and memorable, filled with striking imagery and emotional intensity. Other nights you may sink into the dreamless depths of deep sleep, consciousness resting so completely that there's no memory of any mental activity. Both types of sleep serve essential functions: dreams for integration and creativity, deep sleep for fundamental restoration and renewal. Trusting this natural variation rather than preferring one type over another allows your sleep to unfold according to your deeper needs rather than surface expectations. The Japanese aesthetic principle of mono no aware, often described as the bittersweet awareness of impermanence, finds a gentle expression in the transition towards sleep. There's something poignantly beautiful about the way consciousness gradually releases its hold on the day's experiences, letting go of conversations that felt important, accomplishments that brought satisfaction, concerns that seemed urgent. This daily practice of letting go is preparation for all the larger letting goes that life requires, training in the art of holding lightly while loving deeply. As you rest tonight, you might sense this mono-no-aware quality in your own experience, the tender recognition that this particular day will never come again, that the person you were this morning has already been transformed by the day's encounters and insights, that tomorrow you'll wake as a slightly different version of yourself, shaped by tonight's dreams and renewal. There's something both melancholy and liberating about this constant becoming, this endless transformation that defines conscious existence. The Eastern understanding of consciousness recognizes that what you call you is more like a river than a solid object, a flowing pattern of experiences, memories, sensations, and awareness that maintains certain continuities while constantly changing in its specific content. Sleep is one of the most obvious examples of this fluid nature. The person who falls asleep is not identical to the person who wakes up, though there's enough continuity for the experience to feel like the same individual journeying through time. This perspective can bring tremendous relief to the tendency to carry today's problems into tonight's rest. The consciousness that worried about tomorrow's meeting or replayed this afternoon's difficult conversation is already dissolving into sleep's transformative process. The you that wakes tomorrow morning will have access to the same memories and concerns, but they'll be held within a renewed field of awareness, seen from a fresh perspective, surrounded by new possibilities that couldn't be perceived from today's vantage point. The ancient practice of yoga, in its deeper sense, means union, the recognition of the fundamental oneness that underlies all apparent diversity. Sleep provides a nightly experience of this union, as the boundaries between dreamer and dream, between consciousness and its contents, naturally dissolve into undifferentiated awareness. You don't have to practice complex yoga postures or meditation techniques to taste this unity. Simply allowing yourself to fall asleep with complete surrender opens the door to the same recognition that mystics have sought through lifetimes of dedicated practice. This nightly yoga of sleep reminds you that the separation you normally experience between yourself and the world is more apparent than real, more functional than fundamental. In dreams, you might have conversations with aspects of yourself appearing as other people, explore landscapes that are simultaneously foreign and familiar, experience emotions that belong completely to you, yet feel like they're coming from outside. These dream experiences reveal the fluid, permeable nature of all boundaries, including the one that seems to separate your individual consciousness from the larger field of awareness in which it arises. As these reflections on Eastern wisdom and the sacred nature of sleep continue to flow through your awareness, notice how your body has naturally begun to settle into deeper rest. The insights and perspectives we've explored together aren't meant to be grasped or remembered, but to create a gentle current of understanding that carries you naturally toward the peace that sleep provides. Like a river that doesn't need to think about flowing but simply follows the natural contours of its landscape, your consciousness knows how to find its way to rest when the conditions are supportive. The ancient teachers understood that the deepest wisdom often comes not through effort but through allowing, not through accumulation but through letting go, not through becoming something new but through remembering what has always been true. Tonight, as you surrender to sleep's embrace, You're participating in this ancient practice of return, this nightly pilgrimage back to the source from which you emerged this morning, this daily confirmation that consciousness is both personal and universal, both individual and infinite, both temporary and eternal. And so, dear friend, as the ancient streams of Eastern wisdom flow together in this quiet moment, we arrive at the gentle truth that has been present all along, the peace you've been seeking through these teachings, the harmony Confucius spoke of, the freedom Buddha revealed, the presence Zen masters discovered. It has never been separate from this very breath, this very heartbeat, this very awareness that knows you're listening to these words. Tonight, as you surrender to sleep's embrace, you carry with you not just philosophy but poetry, not just concepts but the living wisdom that has cradled countless souls across millennia. May your dreams be filled with the gentle laughter of sages, and may you wake tomorrow remembering that the way is always under your feet, the teacher always in your heart, and the peace you seek forever available in this eternal now. Sleep well.